Lila was everywhere. Her songs blasted from every radio. Her face graced every magazine cover, and her concerts sold out in minutes. It was a whirlwind of flashing lights, screaming fans, and endless demands on her time. She loved singing and connecting with her fans, but the constant attention was suffocating. It felt like everyone wanted a piece of her, and it was getting harder to breathe. Being Lila wasn't just about singing. It was about maintaining a perfect image. Every outfit, every smile, every word was scrutinized. The pressure to be flawless was immense. And while millions adored her, there were whispers of a darker side to her fame. Some fans took their devotion too far, blurring the lines between admiration and obsession. Letters arrived with unsettling messages. Gifts appeared at her doorstep unannounced, and shadowy figures lingered outside her concerts. Lila tried to ignore it, dismissing it as the price of fame, but a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to snap. The darkness was subtle at first, a shadow lurking at the edge of the spotlight. A fan account dedicated solely to tracking Lila's every move, posting photos taken from seemingly impossible angles. Another sent her a handwritten poem, beautiful yet laced with possessiveness, hinting at a love so profound it bordered on madness. Online forums buzzed with conspiracy theories about Lila's personal life, fueled by fabricated rumors and distorted truths. One particular incident stood out. During a meet and greet, a fan grabbed Lila's hand, refusing to let go. His eyes burned with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Security intervened, but the image of his face, etched with desperate longing, haunted her dreams. The letters became more frequent, more personal, detailing her daily routines with alarming accuracy. Someone was watching her, always watching. Lila started to change her habits, varying her routes and avoiding public places whenever possible. But the feeling of being hunted persisted, a constant weight on her chest. The line between fan and foe was blurring, and Lila knew she was running out of places to hide. His name was Ethan, and he was Lila's self-proclaimed #1 fan. He'd been at every concert, knew every lyric, and plastered his bedroom walls with her posters. But Ethan's devotion went far beyond typical fandom. He started sending Lila increasingly disturbing gifts. A lock of his own hair, a handmade doll resembling her, and cryptic messages written in blood-red ink. He'd wait outside her apartment building for hours, just to catch a glimpse of her. One night, Ethan managed to slip past security at a private event. He cornered Lila in a deserted hallway, his eyes wide and unfocused. "We're meant to be together, Lila," he whispered, reaching out to touch her face. "I know you feel it too." Lila froze, paralyzed with fear. Before security could intervene, Ethan pulled out a small knife, its blade glinting in the dim light. "If I can't have you," he hissed, "no one can." Luckily, a security guard tackled Ethan before he could reach Lila, but the incident left her shaken to her core. This wasn't just obsession. It was a threat to her life. Across town, in a quiet, unassuming apartment, lived a man named Frank. He was a creature of habit, waking up at the same time every day, drinking the same black coffee, and running the same 5-mile route through the park. Few knew about his past life, the years he spent as a Special Forces operative, a ghost in the shadows. He'd seen things, done things that haunted his dreams. Now, he preferred the solitude, the predictability of his routine. Frank worked as a mechanic, spending his days covered in grease and the satisfying clang of metal. He liked the simplicity of fixing things, of taking something broken and making it whole again. He tried to forget the brokenness he couldn't fix, the lives he couldn't save. But the past had a way of catching up. He received a call from an old contact, a hushed voice filled with urgency. "Lila," the voice said, "she's in trouble. You need to help her." Frank hesitated, reluctant to return to that life. But the name Lila sparked something within him, a protective instinct he thought he'd buried long ago. Lila was his younger sister. The news hit Lila like a punch to the gut. The Ethan incident was all over the news, sensationalized and amplified by the media. But that wasn't the worst of it. A new threat emerged, A chilling video posted online showing Lila's home address with a countdown timer ticking down. The message was clear, her time was running out. Fear turned into panic. Lila's management team beefed up security, but it felt like a flimsy shield against an unseen enemy. She couldn't leave her apartment without being swarmed by paparazzi and concerned fans. The world she once loved had become a cage. That night, a brick crashed through her living room window, shattering the glass and scattering shards across the floor. Attached to the brick was a note. "You can't hide forever." Lila collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. She was no longer just a pop star. She was a target. Frank didn't hesitate. He packed a bag, grabbed his old service weapon, and headed straight for Lila's apartment. He knew the security detail wouldn't be enough. They were trained to handle crowds and paparazzi, not a determined attacker. He arrived to find chaos. Police cars, flashing lights, and frantic reporters. He pushed his way through the crowd, flashing a fake ID to the overwhelmed officers. He found Lila huddled in a corner, her face pale and tear-streaked. He knelt beside her, taking her hand. "It's going to be okay, Lila," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "I'm here now." Lila looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of relief and disbelief. "Frank," she whispered, "what are you doing here?" "I'm here to protect you," he replied, his gaze hardening. "I won't let anyone hurt you." He knew this was just the beginning. The threats were escalating, and he had a feeling this was more than just an obsessed fan. Someone was orchestrating this, pulling the strings from the shadows. And Frank was going to find out who. Frank started his investigation by digging into Ethan's background. He visited Ethan's apartment, a shrine to Lila filled with obsessive memorabilia. He found chat logs, forum posts, and online communities dedicated to tearing Lila down, fueled by jealousy and resentment. It was a twisted echo chamber of hate. He also discovered that Ethan wasn't acting alone. There were others, feeding his obsession, encouraging his actions, providing him with information. Frank tracked down some of these individuals, starting with the most vocal online agitators. They were a motley crew. Lonely teenagers, disgruntled former employees, and bitter rivals of Lila's. He used his old skills, intimidation and persuasion, to extract information. He learned that they were being guided by an anonymous figure, someone who promised them fame and recognition for exposing the real Lila. This was bigger than he initially thought. It wasn't just about an obsessed fan. It was a coordinated attack, a calculated attempt to destroy Lila's life. Frank knew he had to find the mastermind before it was too late. The first confrontation took place in a dingy back alley. Frank had tracked down one of the key online instigators, a young man named David, who'd been posting threatening messages and spreading false rumors about Lila. David was hiding in the shadows, armed with a baseball bat and fueled by online bravado. Frank approached him calmly, but his eyes held a steely glint. "I know what you've been doing, David," Frank said, his voice low and menacing. "It's time to stop." David swung the bat, but Frank easily dodged the blow. With a swift kick, he disarmed David and sent him sprawling to the ground. "Who's paying you?" Frank demanded, pressing his advantage. David, now terrified, spilled everything he knew. He revealed the anonymous figure's online alias and the promises they'd made. Frank let him go with a warning, leaving David bruised and shaken. He knew this was just the beginning. There were more like David out there, and he had to find them all. The city was about to get a lot more dangerous. Lila watched Frank work, a mixture of fear and awe swirling within her. He was a different man than she remembered, hardened and focused. He moved with a quiet efficiency, transforming her apartment into a fortress. He installed new locks, reinforced the windows, and set up a surveillance system. He taught her basic self-defense moves, showing her how to protect herself if he wasn't around. As the days passed, Lila started to see Frank in a new light. He wasn't just her overprotective brother. He was her protector, her guardian angel. She confided in him about her fears, her dreams, and her struggles with fame. He listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and support. A bond formed between them, forged in the crucible of danger. Lila realized she wasn't alone anymore. She had Frank, and he would do everything in his power to keep her safe. The fear began to subside, replaced by a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could get through this together. The anonymous figure was growing impatient. The online attacks and threats weren't having the desired effect. Lila was still popular, her new single climbing the charts, and her public image remained largely intact. It was time to escalate. The figure contacted a known hitman, a ruthless professional with a reputation for getting the job done. No questions asked. The target, Lila. Meanwhile, a rival music producer, Victor Martel, watched Lila's success with growing resentment. He had tried to sign her years ago, but she had turned him down, choosing a smaller label that gave her more creative control. Now he was consumed by jealousy, convinced that Lila's success was undeserved. He started spreading rumors about her, sabotaging her performances, and even attempting to steal her songs. But nothing seemed to work. Lila was Teflon, untouchable. Victor, fueled by desperation, decided to take matters into his own hands. He contacted the same anonymous figure, offering his resources and expertise to help bring Lila down. He didn't care about the obsessed fans, he just wanted her gone. Frank traced the anonymous figure's online activity, following the digital breadcrumbs they left behind. He discovered a pattern, a connection to Victor Martel's company. He learned about Martel's failed attempts to sign Lila, his growing obsession with her downfall. It became clear. Martel was the mastermind, using the obsessed fans as pawns in his twisted game. The hitman was his final move, a desperate attempt to eliminate Lila permanently. Frank knew he had to act fast. He couldn't rely on the police. Martel had powerful connections. He had to take matters into his own hands. He called in a favor from an old friend, a skilled hacker with access to surveillance cameras across the city. He needed to know Martel's every move, his every contact. The hacker located Martel's meeting with the hitman in a secluded warehouse on the outskirts of town. Frank knew this was his chance to stop them before they could put their plan into action. He grabbed his gear, said a quick prayer, and headed out into the night. The hunt was on. The warehouse was a maze of corridors and darkened rooms. Frank moved silently, using his training to navigate the shadows. He found Martel and the hitman in a back office, discussing the details of the assassination. Frank burst through the door, catching them by surprise. The hitman, a hulking figure with cold eyes, reacted instantly, drawing his weapon. A fierce gunfight erupted. Frank used his tactical skills to take cover, returning fire with precision. Bullets whizzed through the air, shattering glass and tearing through walls. Martel, terrified, cowered behind a desk. The hitman was skilled, but Frank was faster, more determined. He managed to disarm the hitman and engage him in hand-to-hand combat. The two men grappled, exchanging blows with brutal force. Frank, fueled by adrenaline and a burning desire to protect Lila, gained the upper hand. He delivered a final, decisive blow, knocking the hitman unconscious. Martel, realizing he was defeated, tried to escape, but Frank cut him off. The city was about to learn the name of Frank's sister's tormentor. Frank knew that exposing Martel publicly would put Lila in even more danger. Martel had powerful friends and a vast network of resources. They needed to disappear, to go into hiding until they could gather enough evidence to bring him down for good. He contacted Lila, warning her about the situation. "We need to leave now," he said urgently. "It's not safe here anymore." Lila, trusting Frank implicitly, packed a bag and prepared to flee. They slipped out of the apartment under the cover of darkness, avoiding the paparazzi and security guards. Frank drove them to a safe house, a remote cabin in the mountains, far from the city's chaos. But they were being watched. Martel's men had anticipated their escape and were lying in wait. As they drove along a winding mountain road, a car suddenly appeared behind them, its headlights blinding. The chase was on. Frank slammed on the gas, weaving through the narrow mountain roads. The pursuing car was relentless, its driver skilled and determined. Bullets ricocheted off Frank's car, shattering the windows and puncturing the tires. He knew they couldn't outrun them forever. He spotted a sharp turn ahead, a treacherous hairpin curve overlooking a steep ravine. He took the turn at breakneck speed, the car teetering on the edge of disaster. The pursuing car, unable to match his maneuver, lost control and plunged over the side, disappearing into the darkness below. Frank and Lila were safe for now. They abandoned the damaged car and continued on foot, hiking through the dense forest until they reached the remote cabin. It was a simple, rustic structure, but it offered a temporary sanctuary. As they settled in, exhausted and shaken, Frank knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. They needed a plan, a way to turn the tables on Martel and expose his crimes to the world. Lila stared into the crackling fire, her mind racing. She knew Frank was protecting her, but she didn't understand why he was so good at it. He had never talked about his past, his life before becoming a mechanic. "Frank," she said softly, "what did you do before all this?" Frank hesitated, his eyes clouding with memories. "It's not important, Lila," he said, his voice strained. "It's over. But I need to know," Lila persisted. "I need to understand why you're risking everything for me." He sighed, knowing he couldn't keep it from her any longer. He began to recount his past, his years as a Special Forces operative, the dangerous missions he had undertaken, the lives he had taken. He spoke of his training, his skills, his unwavering commitment to protecting those in need. He told her about a mission gone wrong, a young girl he couldn't save, a failure that haunted him to this day. "I won't let that happen to you, Lila," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "I will protect you, no matter the cost." The next morning, Lila awoke with a newfound determination. She couldn't hide anymore. She had to fight back. "Frank," she said, "I want to learn how to defend myself." Frank hesitated, worried about putting her in harm's way. But he saw the fire in her eyes, the resolve in her voice. He knew he couldn't deny her. He began to train her, teaching her hand-to-hand combat techniques, weapons handling, and situational awareness. Lila was a quick learner, absorbing his knowledge and pushing herself to her limits. She discovered a strength she never knew she possessed. As she trained, she also started to analyze Martel's motives. She realized he wasn't just trying to destroy her career. He was trying to control her, to break her spirit. He wanted to prove that he was the one in charge, that she was nothing without him. Lila refused to let him win. She would fight back not just for herself, but for all the women who had been silenced and controlled by powerful men like Martel. Dressed in an expensive suit and sunglasses, Frank played the part of Lila's stoic bodyguard perfectly. Lila, radiating confidence, charmed her way past the building's security and into the elevator. As they ascended to the penthouse, Frank scanned their surroundings, his senses on high alert. He knew they were walking into a trap. The elevator doors opened, revealing a lavishly decorated apartment with panoramic views of the city. Martel greeted them with a smile, but Frank could see the malice lurking beneath the surface. As Martel showed Lila around, Frank discreetly searched for evidence, hacking into his computer system and downloading incriminating files. But they were running out of time. Martel, growing suspicious, ordered his security guards to surround them. The charade was over. "Looks like our little game is over," Martel sneered, a glint of triumph in his eyes. "Guards, take them." Frank reacted instantly, grabbing Lila and shoving her behind him. He unleashed a flurry of punches and kicks, taking down the guards with brutal efficiency. The room erupted in chaos. Lila, remembering her training, used her newfound skills to defend herself, disarming and incapacitating the remaining guards. Frank fought his way towards Martel, his eyes burning with rage. Martel, realizing he was outmatched, grabbed a gun and pointed it at Lila. "One more step," he threatened, "and she's dead." Frank froze, his body tensed. He knew he couldn't risk Lila's life, but Lila had a plan. "You think you've won, Victor?" Lila said, her voice surprisingly calm. "You think you can control me? You're wrong." She stepped out from behind Frank, her eyes locked on Martel's. "You're just a pathetic, insecure man who's afraid of strong women." Martel's face contorted with rage. "Shut up!" he screamed, tightening his grip on the gun. "You're nothing. I made you who you are." "You didn't make me anything," Lila retorted. "I made myself, and I'm not afraid of you anymore." She pointed to a small device on her wrist, a hidden camera that had been recording their entire conversation. "Everything you've said, everything you've done, it's all been recorded. The police are on their way, and they'll have everything they need to put you away for good." Martel's eyes widened with panic. He had been outsmarted, outmaneuvered. He had lost. Martel, desperate and cornered, lunged at Lila, knocking her to the ground. He raised the gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. Frank, fueled by adrenaline, reacted instantly. He tackled Martel, sending them both crashing through a window and onto the balcony. They grappled on the narrow ledge, hundreds of feet above the city streets. The wind howled, threatening to send them both plummeting to their deaths. Martel fought with the ferocity of a cornered animal, his eyes filled with madness. Frank, using his superior skills and training, managed to disarm him. They exchanged blows, each punch and kick carrying the weight of their shared history. Finally, Frank delivered a knockout punch, sending Martel sprawling onto the balcony floor, unconscious. The police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. It was over. The police swarmed the penthouse, arresting Martel and taking him into custody. The evidence Frank had gathered, along with Lila's recording, was irrefutable. Martel would face a long prison sentence for his crimes. The obsessed fans who had been manipulated by Martel were also brought to justice, facing charges for stalking and harassment. Lila was finally safe. The threats had been eliminated, the danger had passed. She emerged from the ordeal stronger and more determined than ever before. She had faced her demons and emerged victorious. The city celebrated her courage and resilience, hailing her as a symbol of hope and empowerment. She was ready to reclaim her life, her career, and her voice. Lila returned to the stage, not as the manufactured pop star she once was, but as a survivor, a fighter, a true artist. She used her platform to speak out against obsession, violence, and the exploitation of women in the music industry. She created a foundation to support victims of stalking and abuse, providing them with resources and guidance. She became a role model for millions of young people, inspiring them to stand up for themselves, to fight for what they believe in, and to never let anyone control them. Her music took on a new depth, a raw honesty that resonated with her fans on a profound level. She was no longer just a pop star. She was a voice for the voiceless, a beacon of hope in a world filled with darkness. Lila had found her purpose, and she would never let anyone take it away from her. With Lila safe and thriving, Frank knew it was time to disappear. He couldn't stay in the spotlight. It wasn't his world. He quietly slipped away, leaving Lila a note wishing her all the best. He returned to his quiet life as a mechanic, finding solace in the simplicity of fixing things. But he knew his skills were still needed, that there were other people out there who needed his help. He started working with a network of former operatives, providing protection and support to those who couldn't protect themselves. He was a ghost in the shadows, a silent guardian, always watching, always ready to act. The city might have seen the last of Frank, but it hadn't seen the last of his work. Somewhere, in another city, another crisis was brewing, and Frank would be there, ready to light up the night with broken bones and burning rubber. The world needed him even if it didn't know it.